Okay, so I think, ladies and gentlemen, hello, hello. Call you all to order. We are not claiming that John of Beverley is a great play. It might be a great play. You can see what you think. We're not even sure if it's a play at all, and that's part of what we're going to be exploring in this workshop performance. So I'm just going to say a very brief introduction to give you the background. Then we'll put on a little show, and we'll ask your responses and thoughts at the end. Feel free to laugh. Not now, obviously, while I'm doing my introduction, because that's very serious. So, a text which is preserved in Dutch in a chapbook printed about 1512. We are using the English translation by Ben Parsons and Baz Jungel. I can't read my own writing. Jungus, how do you pronounce it, Meg?
No idea.
Jungerlesen. Anyway, let's say, which is published in Medieval English Theatre magazine. Can't speak. In a journal. The translation, as you'll see, is literal rather than literary. And that is one of the things that the actors have been having to get to grips with in this performance. It's a mixture of prose and verse, and it will be interesting to see how much of that you can pick up. And it is accompanied by woodcuts. And these features together create a resemblance between this text, or this book, and Dutch chapbooks, which preserve generally romances rather than plays. So that's one of the pieces of evidence as to whether or not this was a play. The woodcuts supply visual cues to key moments, and Tamara is going to say a little bit more about those in a bit. But one of the main questions which is discussed in relation to this text is about the media by which the story is told. Is the text that we now have a play to be performed? If so, was it to be performed by actors? Was it several actors? Was it to be performed as a monologue by one actor doing several voices? Or was it even a puppet show, which is another theory that has been advanced by it? Is the text that we now have a redaction of a play which was once a play in any one of these forms, but adapted now primarily for the reader? The leesdrama, a reading play, in which woodcuts were often added to help an audience recreate on-stage action when they were reading the text privately. And as I mentioned, this is common in Dutch printed books. If so, the play would provide an interesting parallel to Mary of Nijmegen, which is the text some of you may know, a rhetorician's play, product of the lay fraternities of Dutch culture, interested primarily in rhetoric and instructional theatre. So you can think about how much you think those themes appear in this play too. The movement between rhyme and prose is occasionally rather jarring, as you might notice. Look out for it. This is possibly because of these various processes of adaptation from earlier texts. Is the prose an addition to create a narrative around the poetry? Is the rhyme an addition to emotionally intensify the reiteration of earlier prosaically used words? And I think that is also quite an interesting idea. The actors have complained a lot about the repetition of certain words as a way of kind of trying to create an emotional response to them, I think. Might the traces of rhyme within the prose sections indicate redactions of verse as another possibility? And of course, might the source of this play, if there were an earlier play or an earlier text of some sort, have been English? Because after all, why would the Dutch be printing a play about an English northern saint? We know that Van der Noot, who printed the play, did print the hagiographies of some saints who were not necessarily related geographically to his audience. But the English local saint nonetheless suggests a possible English source, and Beverley was an important centre of drama at this time. What do we actually know about John? John of Beverley was a university man, he was a keen teacher, he was popular among his students, he was obviously somebody we all aspire to be. He ordained Bede, which is pretty cool, and he founded the town of Beverley. Julian of Norwich, as some of you know, mentions John of Beverley, one of only two saints that she mentions John of Beverley as the man who fell spectacularly and was redeemed. She doesn't give us any more detail than that, but we certainly will be seeing some spectacular falling and redemption. The English precedents for accounts of John's life, such as they are, also give precedent for the idea that he was a nobleman who renounced the world, all very familiar hagiographical stuff, and that he lived as a hermit. But only this play provides the lurid account, this extraordinary narrative of exactly what his sin and repentance entailed. I hope you'll enjoy it. It combines two tropes, the trope of the woodrose and the trope of the idea of one sin leading to another, both of which are found in lots of other sources, but no other one source puts them all together and applies them to John. It doesn't, however, present a story which associates John with the theatre, namely that he healed a boy who, in his eagerness to see a performance that was being staged in Beverley Minster, climbed up to look through the window and fell down, and John healed him. So this is kind of quite a nice indication that he took time over theatre goers. You can all feel blessed. Over to Tamara.
Okay, so the performance is by no means historical at all. So what we've done is, you'll see the woodcuts projected up, and we're trying to recreate the woodcuts as well on the stage. So a lot of the decisions about costumes and things like that come from what we've got in the woodcuts, which is not something that we have. You ever done that before?
No, never done this
we've
before.
Never done this before.
This is not my usual method. And yet, if you can't see, feel free to shuffle your chairs around or come down the sides, because it is difficult. Sorry.
Yeah. So the recreation of the costumes and stuff is based on what we have in the woodcuts. It is, like Elisabeth said, it is a work in progress. We're doing it at Harleston in
July.
In a month. So any feedback that you have about how this is working or not working would be really helpful for us, because we've never done this before, and how do you feel about this media? Yeah,
great.
I guess.
Thank you. Is the noise of the water distracting? Are you all right? Shout if you need us to close the door. Thank you. Okay. The history van Jan van Beverley. In former days, there lived a rich and powerful man in England, and he was Count of Beverley. The Count was a widower, as his lady had passed away, but he had from her body two beautiful children, a son called John and a daughter named Colette. These two children he lovingly and amiably raised, as a good father is obliged to do. And when this youth John of Beverley grew older, coming to manhood, and had understanding of good and evil, he came to think to himself that the world was full of deceit, and that one had but a brief time to live on this wretched world. Therefore he made a plan for himself, that he would abandon the world and all of its false works, inspired by the love of our sweet Lord. And he spoke to himself thus:
Deceit of the world, false and empty, I shall forsake you now and forever. You are nothing but a vale of tears, and this living is all a decline. Here there is no eternal city. I wish to seek out a path other than that which the world has taught me. For he who turns himself to the world, he will certainly be abused. And he that stays in service of the world rewards. Therefore I wish to forsake this world and go and lead a holy life, serving God hour by hour, and lay down in devotion and beseech God in my prayers that he will forgive my misdeeds and protect me from all sin. Since I observe in these hours that he who pledges his heart to God and holds himself to the holy 10 Commandments will receive by this a greater reward than he that stays in service to the world. Therefore, I wish my immature youth to be given over early to the virtues, for I observe in my heart that virtue is the greatest good of all, by which we may win the kingdom of heaven.
And as this good and holy youth John thus stood against the world and despised it so bitterly, his father, the Count of Beverley, came up to him and was very surprised by the words that his son said, that he would forsake him and all the world. And he spoke to him in this way:
My most beloved and favoured son John, what grieves you that you would wish to leave me, the court, and my lands, where you have and will have everything you want? Therefore it surprises me greatly that you should wish to leave me, and it shall, I think, cost me my life, since I have no one else to rely on. I think that you should stay here with me, John, and I will pay you gold and silver and possessions aplenty, and I will acquire for you a rich wife, so you may be honoured forever, and I will make you lordship of the land and countship of Beverley. That is why I plead that you will stay here with me.
When the youth heard the Count, his father, say this, he spoke to him with sweet words as follows.
My very redoubtable father, my lord, you plead with me that I would stay with you, and this I yearn to do. If you can make me one promise, I will do as you ask. If not, I will no longer remain in your court, even though you may kill me for it.
And the Count, understanding his son's words, answered him thusly and said,
My dear son, ask of me whatever you wish, and it shall be done by me for you.
My noble father,
the young man said,
I therefore ask you to banish death from this land, so that he may not come here again or kill any man in this land. Otherwise, I will immediately part from you and go to live as a hermit in a wasteland my whole life long, never come into your court. For riches and pleasures are all fleeting and against the soul. I wish to go in search of unchanging things and my soul's salvation.
When the Count heard these words, he began to cry heavily and spoke to him with sad words.
Oh, son, I do not have this power, so I cannot claim I can do it. No one can escape the death which God wishes to allocate him. I wish I knew who advised you and who has brought you to choose this life.
Father, all my soul's strength has been touched within by God, so that I would love him above all. Also, it is given in the first commandment that men should love him above all, for he is our Father, I would have you know, who is enthroned in heaven and came down here for us and assumed humanity, born of a pure virgin.
John, son, you have chosen what is right. May God always inspire you to goodness. I will keep silent from now on and henceforth never impede you again. Pray for me to our Lord, that he might send his grace to me and be gracious to me, a sinner. This I ask of you at this time.
Father, may God forgive you your sins and give you his heaven after this life. And may he do likewise for all of us when we depart from this life. Now, I will go to become a hermit, forsaking all things, all worldly things. Friends and family will I never see, and go to lodge in a wood.
And after these words, the son kissed the father very many times with crying eyes and with sighing heart. And after many cries and sighs, they parted from each other. And the son John immediately went with great devotion to a large forest. And there he made a hut to praise our sweet Lord day and night with faithfulness. And when the good John had lived a while in the forest, his sister thought that she would seek out her brother and see whether he wanted to continue his austere life in the forest. She did as she thought and travelled until she came to the place where she found her brother. And she said to him as follows.
It confuses me, brother, in many ways that you have come to this point. You might just as well lead a holy life without separating yourself from all company. If only one could deny you this life that you have chosen. Of a noble status we are born, and also the high lineage.
Oh, sister, know that I care little for that, for it is nothing but vanity. And what does it help if we argue a lot? For I have no friend or kinsman so great that he would wish to die that death for me, which I must die at any rate. But God, who is the eternal good, has suffered death for me. Here, in this vale of tears, he died out of true love, Sister, you should think on this and keep yourself away from all creatures and serve God at all times for his clear, eternal bliss.
Certainly, John, brother, you speak the truth. You have taught me very well, and you tell me the plain truth. But there is no man, hair the bald, who would oppose you here in the land, or else among all of the people that would dare to mistreat you. They must tolerate you, for you are rich and powerful by birth. One shall have to honour you here.
Sister, I see in truth that you wish to follow the flesh. If you had tasted the soul's desires, or understood the nature of the soul, you would not speak these things. Or if you had tasted heavenly things, you should not say these things. Certainly you have been misguided, but I shall tell you how the world, the devil, and the flesh, when all these three have had their desires, then the noble soul is lost, which God so amicably has chosen. Sister, you should think on these things and carry a pure heart within, precious with clarity down to the base, in virtue, without sin. And you should give yourself to this, so that you might hold on to your virginal life and an unmarried state. This is better counsel for the soul than that which you wish me to consider.
Brother, in all good things, may God always strengthen you, and also in all good works. And may God give me his grace. I shall live the better all my life by that you have made me comprehend him. Farewell, brother. I will go back again to our father's court, but brother, you must know, I swear to you, I will come here often to speak with you and provide everything you lack, and I shall do all that you ask.
In God's name, sister, that pleases me. Come in the name of our Lord. Now greet our father for me profusely, and go. May God go with you.
And after these words, the girl parted from her brother, and she went into the town to the count, her father, where she thought very often of her brother. The good hermit John stayed alone in his hut, where he served our Lord greatly, inwardly, and devoutly. The devil, noticing that this holy man thus remained steadfast and ardent in the love of our dear Lord, which he greatly hated, thought to himself how he might draw away and deprive the foresaid hermit of the grace and salvation of our dear Lord. This he was very determined to do, and he went for that reason in the form of an angel to the place where he found this holy hermit, and spoke with a feigned, sweet voice to him as follows.
John! I am sent here by my supreme Lord, who commands and orders you to commit one of these three sins: drinking until drunk, rape, or murder. You must commit one, otherwise you shall be damned eternally, since you have angered him by elevating yourself in your holiness. I say again, you must commit one, otherwise you shall be damned eternally. So think well on what you will do.
And with these words, the devil departed from there, and the holy man remained there alone, very sick at heart and soul from the tidings that he had received from that angel. And he was in great confusion which sin was the least he might perform, as all three are very great and wicked. And after he had been torn by doubt in this way for a long time, he chose drinking until drunk, thinking that this was the smallest sin of the three. Nonetheless, he worried that great evil might come from it, and he spoke to himself with weeping eyes as follows.
Oh God, now give me this blessing, for my heart is sorely tried. I have a great fear within that nothing good will come to me from this, for I cannot think of a thing so difficult. I would rather die 2 deaths if God would release me from this.
While he stood in such a way and complained, his sister came to him. She was very surprised by the cries of her brother, and said to him,
brother, I think I hear you complain. I fear you must lack something. This I can hear well from your speech. Or you have something in your heart that pains you. Do you know of something you might desire that you wish to drink or to eat?
Oh, yes, sister, I do, I tell thee. I would like to drink some wine, and for you to stay here with me until day becomes evening, for then if I take too much wine, you should warn me. For I have a great fear within that something bad may befall me.
John, brother, you should not worry. I shall do for you as you ask. Drink until you have enough and satisfy your appetite, and do not spare the cost. There is wine enough in our Father's court. For this God must have thanks and praise. He is the only one who can grant such goods.
And after these words, John's sister went to her father's court and took from there the best wine and the best food she could obtain and brought it to her brother. He drank from that wine so abundantly, becoming so drunk that he did not know what he said or did. And the devil, noticing that he had fooled the good man in this way and brought him to drunkenness, thought to himself that he would now tempt him with uncleanness, which he did. And he tempted him to such an extraordinary degree that the good man became greatly infected with uncleanness and burned within with desire, so that he caught a yearning for his sister to impose his will on her. And he said to her thus,
This wine fills life with joy. I tell thee, sister, this is a noble liquid. I'm becoming delighted by it. This I now feel in my body. Sister, you are a beautiful woman, and you shall soon please me well.
Oh, brother, how dare you say this to me? It astounds me very greatly. You should feel ashamed of yourself before our Lord. I think you're out of your senses, or else this impulse is given you by the devil who should like to corrupt us. I would prefer to die the death before I did this sin with you. You taught me, you did, in your counsel, that all sin I should abandon and lead a pure virginal life. This you have taught me yourself. Also, we should be dishonored by this, as you are called a holy man.
Sister, know that I cannot resist you. This I tell you in plain words. I shall play with you the game of love, whether you like it or not. I shall do all my wishes with you and impose my will upon you.
And after this he took his sister in both his arms and threw her forcefully onto the grass. And he did his will with her. And after he had fulfilled his will, he started fearing that she would complain to her father. And he said to himself thus,
Now I'll worry about this above all things, that she will bring me into scandal when she talks of this and damages me with her words. It is better that I murder her, this I now think in my reasoning, than that she bring me into scandal and bury her deep in a ditch so no man will ever know where she is gone. I will spare her no longer and take her life straight away.
and when he had murdered her, he dug a ditch for her, so that no man should know. And when he had buried her, he was seized with such a great fatigue that he had to sleep. And when he sat and slept, a voice cried out from heaven and spoke to him in this manner.
Oh, John, what sin you have wrought! You were once a holy hermit. Now you have lost all your sanctity and are bereft of all your virtue, because you have believed the devil, who falsely has misled you. Since he has deceived you, he is now having a great feast.
And when the hermit awoke from his sleep, he was extremely scared and afraid within himself, so that from great terror he could barely stir or stand, and he said thus, all weeping,
Oh, I grow fearful in my soul. For while I sat and slept, I heard a voice which called to me. So that now I'm afraid I've done something which sorely afflicts me, as my conscience was totally overwhelmed. But where are you, beautiful maid? Sweetest of all? here my knife all bloodied. I think I have done ill to her. Oh, it comes to me now very clearly. Oh, I know full well that I raped her and with force brought her to it. Oh, and also that I murdered her. This I now know very accurately. That drunkenness is the greatest grounds for wickedness. Oh, although I chose it as the smallest sin, it is the greatest grounds for evil. And now I know with my own eyes that the devil has fooled me falsely. And this I shall rue eternally. No, nevertheless, I must not despair as Judas did. I will go seek out the city of Rome and confess everything before the Pope, our earthly father, for I know no other counsel on earth than the priestly estate.
And after these words, the good hermit, with crying eyes, with heavy heart, and with great regret for his sins, began on his way to Rome, to confess to the Pope, hoping to receive penance for his sins and there be absolved. Now, St. John the good hermit travelled long with great effort and sorrow for his sins, and he came at last to the city of Rome. And he went directly to the Pope, before whom he fell very humbly to both his knees, and he started weeping so very extraordinarily that he could not speak a word for great sadness. The Pope, seeing this, wondered to himself deeply, and spoke to him with these sweet words.
Pilgrim, I think you love me. I see this well in your bearing. I think, seeing you, that you are tired. I see this well in your manner. Pilgrim, tell me quickly, in what land were you born?
Oh, favoured earthly father, this I shall let you know. I was born in England and have come here from there and undertaken this great pilgrimage so that I might have God's grace. For I am so laden with sins. Oh, earthly father, I wish you to know that I am so soiled with sins, that I am one of the wickedest sinners that appears into the earth. Earthly father, will you hear me? I will lay all my sins bare before you and tell you all of them.
Yes, pilgrim, I wish you to reveal to me all of your sins, great and small. I hope that God will forgive you, and I hope that you will find reconciliation with him when you never again commit them, and when you regret and repent them, and when you are prepared to make amends with the penance I should set you.
I have done the wickedest deed that ever a sinner has wrought, which is drunkenness, murder, and rape. Oh, I had a sister, fair and good. One time it befell me that I was extremely drunk. With me, she ate and drank until I threw her down there and raped her with force, and then I murdered her, that beautiful woman, and then I buried her deep beneath the soil. Oh, and I suffered great regret in my heart when I came back to myself.
The like of this I never knew, nor has it ever come to me before. I do not know.
Your heart may tear from regret.
The heart may tear from regret when you come to think of it. The air might stink from your sins. It is a wonder you do not sink down into the earth and drown. So, I think God must have a remedy for these.
Oh, earthly father, I know very well that I have greatly misbehaved. Therefore, I wish and yearn for your penance and submit to your ruling, even though it may kill me or tear me limb from limb.
Pilgrim, I see your remorse is very great. I see it well from your expression. But I do not know what penance to set you. Nor can I give it at this time. So, but do not let this dissuade you. For I shall console you nevertheless. This occurred to me in my mind. In England, there stands a forest, and in the forest a hermit dwells, and his name, it is certain, is John of Beverley. He is in all virtues perfected. He stands before God in high regard, and it is shown to me he on earth that God has chosen him. So it is strange, you being from England, that you do not know of him.
Oh, yes, I know earthly father better than any man living. May God send his grace to him. John knows all my personal business, my sins great and small, and my errors, he knows them all. From him I have taken counsel that I should come to see your grace. So owing to this, Holy Father, I beg you to have mercy. I wish to amend my misdeed.
Pilgrim, I cannot find any guidance as to what penance I might set. So, therefore go, without waiting any longer, head back again to where you live in England and seek out John of Beverley and live by his advice. This I command you by obedience, for he is so wise and so judicious and so beloved by God. Now go, quick, fast, without any delay, back to the road from which you have come.
Oh, earthly father, you know better counsel for me from this. It is poor consolation that I am dispatched to myself. Oh, fountain that all the world praises, Mary, solace of all sinners, remember me at this hour. All the world's hope, comfort and faith. Pray for my simple misdeed to Christ, your well-loved child, that he may send me his mercy and his compassion as well. Fountain of all devotion, God's blessed mother, help me now where you are. I pray to you, queen and fair maiden, empress of heaven's throne, let me feature in your prayers. My heart cries to you at this time, do not let me be forsaken. O mother of all charity, stir yourself quickly to pray for me. Free me from the hellish fire. Oh, of all creatures, the meekest, unsullied virgin, unblemished and pure. Beautiful virgin, hear my cries. Unblemished virgin, have mercy on me. Show me in the hour of my death your face, for that is a great bliss. Your holy life is an image and an example for all good women. Here in this world and beyond, pure virgin, they shall honour you, as I know no man in his kingdom can counterfeit your likeness. Root of women, you must remain, in east or west, I dare well attest.
When the hermit St. John had journeyed far with great effort and great remorse for his sins, after travelling hard, he came back to the same place where he had murdered his sister. And when he saw the place, he said this:
Now I am here at the place where I did those great sins. And now, without delay, I will affix a punishment and arrange myself here so that I will go about like an animal, on hand and on foot like a beast, my whole life long in this forest. And I shall drink water and eat roots, this I shall not neglect. And my mouth shall never more speak until the day that a mother may bring forth a boy child 1 night in age, and he will tell me that God has forgiven my sins. No more will I speak until then.
After these words, he knelt down on both his knees, setting both his hands on the earth, and began to go on hands and feet like a beast, which he did for 7 years or thereabouts, without eating anything other than roots, and not speaking, but mute like a beast. Now I shall be silent about the holy hermit St. John of Beverley, and write about the count who reigned in that land. When the holy hermit St. John was in Rome, his father, the Count of Beverley, died. And after his death, those of the land elected another count, who was the nearest relation to the deceased count. And when that count had reigned for some years, it so happened that his wife fell pregnant and was heavy with child. And when the time was fulfilled, she bore a beautiful son from the grace and the will of God. From this the Count was very happy, and early in the morning he ventured out to hunt on the same day that they would baptize the child. And as the Count and his huntsmen had been hunting for a long time in the wood, the huntsman saw the holy hermit going on his hands and feet, and he thought this was a strange animal, because he was all rough and hairy. The huntsman, not knowing what kind of animal it was, said this to the count.
Oh, now I see the strangest animal that ever I saw. But, my lord, I think I see a marvellous beast. I should almost be afraid of it. It is the strangest wonder that ever I've seen in this forest.
Quickly, blow the horn, let us hunt it, and let the dogs chase after it rapidly, so that it does not elude us. But once it is captured, we will not beat it, kill it, or slay it, but we shall bind it fast, and to the court send it. There, take it to the hall, and the ladies shall see it all together, and behold this wonder, and market it. As to court, as to church, they bring my son, who was born into our house last night, from my favoured wife, who this night was in labour.
But, my lord, I have captured this beast without striking or slaughtering it. It let me seize him like a little lamb. It did not resist one bit.
It is good for you to bind it fast, so that it will not escape.
No, indeed, I shall tie it fast without any further delay, and then I shall lead him beside me. See how quietly he goes. Oh, it is not brutal in the least. It will let itself be led like a lamb. I never saw a beast so tame. See, it goes with us wherever we wish.
Lead it to the court and be quiet, all silent. There inside in the throne room, and let it go serenely, without beating and without jostling.
With these words, the count and the hunter came with St. John into the town, with no other thought than that he was a strange animal. And there came unto them many women, taking the count's son to church to receive his holy baptism. And when they came there with the child, the count and the hunter were standing with the holy hermit St. John, whom they had bound very fast, having thought nothing other than that he was a strange animal. And then the child called out with a loud voice, saying thus to St. John the hermit, "Stand up, John of Beverley. This I command you at this time. God has forgiven you all your sins. For the penance that you have done, you shall obtain the eternal reward once you are here no longer."
God must be blessed for this. And this child must be blessed, for God has sent his voice through him. And blessed must be the mother who carried him and brought him forth into the world. Oh, that I have lived unto the day that God has forgiven my sins. Oh, this is very gratifying to my heart.
Now, I have never heard until this present day more wonder upon an hour. Are you human? A creature from God's fashioning in this time?
Oh, yes. I am John of Beverley, a hermit. I have lived in these woods, and I have gone about like an animal on hand and foot these 7 years, and never in that time, I swear, have I spoken a word of any language. But somebody should summon a priest for me so that I can confess everything and tell my life as honestly as I can.
So it shall be done. Holy, blessed man of Beverley, well-beloved nephew. Your father was indeed a noble count, and we are both of one blood. Therefore accept it as a tribute that I myself shall summon a bishop for you.
And after
any longer delay.
And after these words, the count himself went to the Bishop of Canterbury, whom he told all this history, praying him that he would go with him to his court, for there was a holy man who wished to confess. The bishop understood the words of the count and went immediately with him to his palace, where he found the holy hermit St. John, who confessed to the bishop. And when the bishop heard the confession, he was greatly astonished and said this:
I have never heard such deeds as I have now heard in this confession. I pray you, John, say to me, when you took your sister's life, where did you bury that very beautiful woman? Show me the place this day. God is he that can do all things, and so he has all things under control. Almighty God in heaven's kingdom. His works are miraculous. This mercy that you have received freely cannot have happened without your sister also having obtained mercy. That you may mark and understand. You were he who instigated this thing. She was the one who underwent death and truly died in the manner of a martyr. I hope that God persevered for her, also granting her mercy.
Now will I go to the place that I buried her, that is certain, decked with leaves and under the grass. Oh, this I shall rue forever. Oh God, may I behold her again, and also speak to her in greeting. Then the joy would be boundless that I should have within my heart. Now will I set off to go there.
The holy hermit St. John went immediately to where he had buried his sister, and he broke open the grave with weeping eyes. And as soon as the grave was opened, she stood up out of the grave and said this with a loud, clear voice.
Oh, who is this creature that woke me out of my rest? It seems to me it is my brother who speaks there. I can hear it well from his speech.
What? Do you live again, pure maid, that altogether beloved sister of mine? Lord, how may this be? And I did to you such evil death.
Brother, I have no need. I live with joy in my spirit. I have seen many high feasts. Many angels of great worth have come to me here on earth with heavenly melodies, so I might delight myself with them. I have seen them here with me often, and your guardian angel I have seen with great joy coming to me, and he told me about your holy, austere life that you have given to yourself. And my guardian angel has made me understand that I shall be rewarded with maidenhood, even after you have taken my purity, since I did not give my will to that, and it was against my wishes. Drunkenness drove you to it, and because an evil angel drove you to murder and rape me. Therefore, the angels and archangels came to comfort me all days. They told me also at this time that God forgave you your sins. Then God, who works all things for good, sent my soul again into my body, so I might inform you, speaking a reliable confession, and receive that holy sacrament before my life here would end. So I must now prepare myself for that.
Oh, sister, God must be praised for the events that he has done to us both. Now come, let us go where we may find the bishop, so that he may know and understand, and we can tell him of both of our lives, and pray that he will give us that worthy, holy, lofty sacrament, so that we, after these lives full of sadness, may come to Jesus the adored, where God the Father will bring us. Now say we all, Amen, together.
Amen.
Amen.
Everyday story of ordinary country folk. I'll let the actors get changed. Do come back out again when you're ready, because people might want to ask you things about it. I suppose two big questions we could structure our discussion around, apart from why. In relation to the themes of the conference. So we'll just say a couple of things and then ask for your comments and questions. So firstly, how does the play talk about the emotions of its characters? As we would expect, perhaps, from medieval drama, we have a transparent expression by the characters of their own emotions. We expect people to tell the truth about what they're feeling in medieval drama. That's sort of the convention. And that in itself, of course, in a way obviates the need for a narrator, especially when it's combined with theatrical action. So the question of whether a narrator should be in there and how a narrator might or might not function is perhaps one we could think about. Well, one thing that we have experimented with a little bit is whether the narrator speaks before, after, or during the action that is happening, and how it has a very different effect. It can be quite comical if the narrator speaks before, for example, because you have the impression of his directing the play. But there are certain moments, for example, when John takes the initiative in deciding he's going to be a beast. The narrator tells us after John's decision. So it's as if, at that moment at least, there's a moment of John himself coming up with his own penance, which of course is, in a way, the theme of the play. We'll return to that. So, I mean, it's a drama game I've done with drama students as well, tell the story with the narrator speaking before, during, and after the action, and the different effects that can create. Also, of course, there is transparent interpretation of the action by the characters who are on stage with each other. So, for example, the most obvious example, perhaps the Pope's wonderful line, "I see from your expression that you are truly penitent about this." And this brings us to a question, something that Meg asked me to mention because she meant to say it yesterday, about gesture, about the way gesture may or may not work in medieval drama, and the fact that even if we don't have implicit stage directions, we have a lot of, we don't have explicit stage directions, we have a lot of implicit stage direction. The kind of thing that we're used to getting, people are very aware of in Shakespeare, but of course it had all happened for 200 years before that in medieval drama as well. So that might be something as well to talk about, the way that gesture fits with the emotion, and obviously, most obviously, freezing the gesture in relation to the woodcuts. Finally, I suppose we would have to think about the Woodwose years as themselves a performance of emotion by John. But I'll throw those things out for us to come up to. And Tamara, if you wanted to say a little bit about...
Yeah, there was a couple of things just in relation to maybe, I guess it's something that we could open up to discussion, but how do you think that the play seeks to create emotion in the audience or the reader? Because obviously you're getting the text up there, which is what the reader would have seen. It's not the same font or anything, the setup is a little bit different. But as a reader, you're seeing that, and as an audience, you're seeing something different, maybe. So maybe we can kind of talk about how that might be different or the same in the way that you're viewing it. And do the woodcuts serve an affective function? And if they do, or if they don't, are the woodcuts, I mean, are the images that we have in the woodcuts are very similar to other affective images that we have. So especially the one of the devil. It looks very much, I mean, we thought it looked very much like an Annunciation.
I suspect it's a reworking. That woodcut, they did actually rework woodcuts to, we've got to be quick actually, haven't we, Mary? We've got 5 minutes, yeah. Okay. As you know, woodcuts were often adapted because it was cheaper than doing a woodcut from scratch. And I think if we look at this one, I'm pretty sure that was once an Annunciation woodcut. And you just added some devil's claws and horns onto the devil. Even the fact that John has a book. Yeah, sorry. Tomorrow.
Yeah. That was basically it. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just talking while you were changing the slide. Yeah. So do we does that kind of in some way create a false emotion in us before we look closer and see what's actually happening? Are we having a sort of strange response to the woodcut? I suppose that was, yeah. Sorry.
Well, if you were, that would be perfectly matched to John's response. An angel has come.
Yeah. Exactly. He, like us, thinks this is an Annunciation moment. Yeah. Anyway, so questions, comments, thoughts, Mary?
One comment, it was actually something that was, I was reminded of by the actions of the actor playing John when finally realizing the sin that he'd committed and holding the knife in front of him. And then there was this moment that she performed very well of, drawing back from despair. And I was reminded by that of the fact that so many of the 7 deadlies are emotions. And so that suggested to me, and the way that it was performed suggested this need for sort of emotional control, something that had been lacked, that drunkenness had kind of caused to just evaporate completely. But I was wondering, actually, if the actor could maybe say something about how you chose that particular gesture, or...
With that speech, it's very hard to remember because every few seconds he's saying something completely different from what he was saying before. So for me, even just learning it before thinking about before, it had to be kind of, all right, what thoughts just happened now, what thoughts just happened now. And I think what you say that I thought is, I know the devil has fooled me falsely, which I will rue eternally. So like this kind of idea of eternity. And then he says, oh no, but he says, nevertheless, I must not despair as Judas did. So Judas killed himself. I'm sure you will know better than me. So I don't know. I just thought there must be some kind of space in between those two statements where that thought process happens, because you're talking about what's written in the textbook, and that's not really talked about. But he must have got from that first thought to the second somehow through some process.
Yeah, no, I thought it was just a wonderful
and
way
I just
of.
happen to have a knife in my hand, so
Yeah.
this is deductive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, we've been talking a lot about gestures as signaling emotions, but I'd like to know, for you, do gestures actually help you remember your text, that you associate the gesture to the line you're supposed to say, and for the actor then those work that way as well?
There are certainly techniques at drama school where you have to kind of, it's not always how it works, but it's kind of a technique where you can choose a gesture that helps you embody what you're trying to say, so you can come from the gesture back inwards to the feeling. Although I'd say it usually works the other way around, in my experience.
Yeah, sometimes I do that, I think, but I don't think. I was gesturing a lot, but just because I've got such extreme, ridiculous characters, so I think that just helps me be happy because the pop. Although my cape was not, I was hands in there. But I think it can just help to make a character as well. If it's kind of a cartoonish character anyway, and you're trying to be a bit over the top.
I think most often.
But sometimes it helps you remember, and that is quite hard to remember. I think weirdly, because it's a bit disjointed, the translation is a bit disjointed, I think it's quite hard to remember, so sometimes it can help. Yeah.
Physicalising the text does help you remember it, but I think usually you need to come to the gesture second, unless with some of the bits of this maybe the other way. But actually, because we've had bits where the woodcut is telling us how a gesture is, sort of like this. That's been interesting. That's been why are you doing that, and how would I get from saying that line to, if the devil's slash, a really cleverly disguised angel is telling me to commit sins, well, I'm reading the book. So that's a bit of a challenge.
I think it's a good example of how a script is working and how emotions are embedded in the script, because it's a really classic topos in a Christian moral, is the exaltatio humilitatis and humiliatio superbiae. So the pride, the proud goes down, then it gets humble, and then you rise up again. So it's classic. It's from the Bible, and it's really how it works emotionally. Is that as the reader or the people watching the scene, it works as a kind of rhetorical figura, and people watching are just constructing their emotional self by this figura, by the dialogue between the figure and themselves. So that's why sometimes it's really classic, but then the emotional emphasizes, they just stress the main important point of the script, and then the spectator can relate to it in his own life. And I think that's the way the efficacy of emotions are working in a script. And it's really interesting because, like I say, it's really normal. It's a really normal, classic topos of a Christian moral. But at the same time, that's why it's written again and again in the Middle Ages, because I think there's an efficacy in it. And I don't know, it's really interesting to see it, enacted. The script is enacted, so it's really nice.
I actually have a completely opposite point in a way, is that it was very funny, but it didn't make me feel that the contrition was at all moving, or the crime was terrible. Wait, he's raping his sister, isn't that funny? So to me, even though it's very enjoyable, I don't think it's necessarily the performance as such. I remember reading the story and laughing my head off, but surely there's a complete disconnect between what the story is trying to do and what it actually does.
we were not responding the way we were supposed to, despite all these emotional, like, oh, I'm crying so much, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's really, we decided not to even try it.
I think it's very difficult to try and do that straight. It just doesn't. Yeah, I mean, actually, interesting. The Pope thing. We were talking about this earlier as to whether the Pope, when he says, "Oh, you should go to John of Beverley," whether he actually knows that that's John of Beverley, and he's saying it because it's the moral of you should go and learn from yourself. So he thought that might be a serious way of doing it, but we were like, nah, we'll just.
We thought of it as initially sort of a kind of that this Pope is quite stupid, and that maybe there's something being said there about how you have to kind of trust in yourself and not. But so we played that.
So we chose that way, but that seemed easier, I think.
But there might be something really lovely in that he's going, I know what you've done, I know who you are, and I'm going to send you back to yourself.
I think, I mean, it would have been, I think you could play it really, if you played it that way with the Pope quite straight, so that the Pope knows, and that then it's a message about, the answers inside you in some kind of proto-Protestant way or something, then that would kind of work up until the bit where the sister's resurrected, which is just so absurd. I think that's the problem, isn't it? You can't. You could take it. You could think it's all very funny up until that moment, and that was a message, and then the resurrection scene would just be. Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that there are different. That John of Beverley was a saint before this story, and there are different ways of interpreting him. Because I think for us as kind of modern readers, I can't see why he should be a saint, and I can't see why there's anything acceptable about his story. I can't see how it's. I mean, everyone has woken up going, "Oh, what do I do?" But no one's gone, "Oh, right, yeah, it went that far." And I find it very hard to understand as an honourable figure.
I think one thing that struck me about that scene, I mean, even though the Pope, I think you were playing it for laughs, but it seemed to me that your response when you continued to speak about John in the third person, that came across pretty straight, actually, and that seemed, to me, it was interesting to see how the two modes could sit right next to each other. I mean, you had this really kind of comical Pope, but then that seemed to me a pretty serious and genuine moment, actually.
It's a theologically profound idea that God sees us in our perfected state, not in our fallen.
I really enjoyed also the way you directed or you staged the thing, and I think it's an emotional response to the thing, but I think the magic of drama is wonderful, and I think when you see, in a sense, the way you've offered a gloss on the woodcuts and how much more, in a sense, we get out of the performance in comparison to the woodcuts, I think it's quite extraordinary. And in a sense, I think I agree with Marie. I think we laughed. I laughed. I think we got lots of funny moments. But in a sense, I don't feel that the essence, the medical essence of the play is taken away. And in a sense, the way you performed the Pope, I think was. I mean, again, one goes into one's own personal interpretation, but I found the contrast between the Pope and the Archbishop quite interesting. Is that a message conveyed about, one kind of corrupt clergy, another one that is more, in a sense, all of that, even with the commentary text, I think is incredibly rich and still effective if one wanted to really have a go at the theological issues. And I think I don't see why it should be one or the other. I think both work perfectly well. And I think that's that's the way to go forward with modern performances. I think that's entertaining and incredibly just a lot of substance in the way you do it.
We used to talk about between being riotous and then suddenly very serious, and it does tend to do things like that.
So the entrance of Markaday and Lancelot was lost, and just killing the life.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because the Archbishop isn't presented in any of the woodcuts, and if we had an image of the Archbishop against the sort of the image of the Pope, we tried to recreate the papal tiara. There wasn't enough time to create it in all its glory. But even
we used to have one, but we've lost it.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
But even just sort of in the way that they're dressed, maybe might perhaps would have told us of some of the difference between the two.
But with the Archbishop at the end as well, like I guess for me, it was kind of we were kind of like, let's just play it straight, because he's also, I think his message is quite profound for me personally. It's like you were the one who did this. She was the innocent one, so I really hope that God has given her mercy as well. That seemed like actually for me the most profound message of the whole play, not like don't drink because you might murder your sister. I hope that, yeah, that's obviously a very modern take on it, but I was just that was a reason behind playing it straight.
Yeah, and that's interesting actually, which just made me think that he's always like, but I need to get some mercy, please, instead of really hope.
At no point is he praying for the soul of his sister.
No,
which you kind of want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really bad.
The one thing, I suppose the reading that you gave where the proud falls and rebuilds, I'm not so sure that I saw him as so proud in the beginning, because he was at least trying at the moment of his temptation to do what he thought was good and right, and I didn't find the projection of his chosen life to be self-righteous. I don't know if that... So I found it a little bit, in that sense, emotionally confusing, in that I didn't know if the moral was, that the proud fall and redeem themselves, or that the good fall. Because for all of his goodness in choosing this hermit's life, it didn't exactly work out so well for him.
Yeah, it's only the devil who says you're in danger of pride, because you're being so perfect, isn't it?
You notice at the end of the play, what he is at the end that he isn't in the beginning is a holy man in connection with a bishop. Early on, he's a holy man living on by himself with nobody to check whether he's talking to the devil or saints. And that is interesting.
And the statement of the sacrament.
But in the plays, someone who's living a good life, mankind, is tempted, and that mercy figure, an external figure, comes and guides back. So I think that's kind of a typical thing.
But the fact that he listened to the devil proves that he was wrong, actually, because the right man doesn't listen to the devil. He has the discretion to judge the right from wrong.
So that's why. Is it more that the more however perfect we are, we should always be on the lookout for.
Yeah, for sure. Because we're in this life, we're imperfect all the time. Even the perfect are always doing penance. Yeah. So that's why when you don't find it necessary to do penance like he was doing, then it's where you fall to the devil. The devil is always two in the hand of God. He's not independent from God. God knows everything. He does everything. So the devil is always a tool. So it's the tool of his downfall. But then, yeah, it's proud. It's his pride that brought him down. It's for sure.
And I think the point then, he needs the clergy and he needs the sacrament. In fact, suddenly the sacrament bit, which we haven't really. I mean, you've had, I suppose, with Freedom Why. It is a strong assertion of the importance of the church, isn't it? Even if the Pope is not getting a good press.
I get the impression he felt the devil because he was naive and enthusiastic.
Yes, I think so too. That he was naive and enthusiastic. That's kind of maybe also the right.
Anyway, I think he says, "I can't get drunk. I can't think of anything more difficult." Quite easy.
Just keep drinking.
Perhaps we should stop there. So we've run over time, so we'll leave it there.
But please join me in thanking Elisabeth.